And now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and begin today's event. Is your on-ramp and off-ramp. Get ready for customer onboarding in the age of IE. Today's event is sponsored by Ephesoft and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce your moderator for today, Danielle Fugazi. Danielle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caroline. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As Caroline said, we'll be talking about getting ready for customer onboarding in the age of AI. We have a terrific group of panelists today, so I want to go ahead and introduce them and then get into our content here. We have a pretty great program lined up today. So first, I'm Danielle Fugazi. I'm a contributing editor with American Banker. We're really lucky today that we have EJ Ackner joining us. He's head of digital banking and strategic change for HSBC. EJ leads the bank's efforts to bring new digitally driven business models into the marketplace. Next, we have Tony Denola, a partner in the digital transformation and management group of Grant Thornton. Tony has a lot of experience and has centered a lot of it around large-scale ERP implementation. And last but not least, we have Steve Bowles, the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Evangelism at Ephesoft, where he develops new strategies and opportunities for the company. We're going to have a program today where Steve and I kind of co-moderate. So, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you and get us started here with our program today. Thank you all for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. Before we get started, just a real quick infomercial. If you aren't familiar with Ephesoft, we're a leader in the intelligent document processing space. So we've been around since 2010 and provide document automation solutions for all different types of financial services and banking workflows, whether it's tax forms, invoices, or broad solutions like customer onboarding or digital mailrooms. We apply best-in-class solutions to maximize productivity and context. So I probably don't have to tell you this, but the past year has been an interesting one for all organizations and all industries. We've really had to reinvent the way that we do business and our operations and how we interact and intersect with our customers. With our customers locked away at home, the stay-at-home madness, new requirements are popping up left and right, and the only real certainty has been uncertainty. In the FinServ world, it's been a roller coaster ride for those who weren't ready for the full press on digital. Here are some key questions Gartner's seen over and over, and we'll address some of these throughout the webinar through slides and discussion. We've all struggled a bit with the new normal and how to serve customers. This last year has been a litmus test for all our systems and customer-facing technology. It's imperative for us to focus on the customer experience and figure out the proper mix of digital and human, providing a blended experience and an effective way of providing services. So just where does the industry stand today? Let's get a baseline for our discussion today. There is no industry that's been subject to more disruption than financial services and banking. It seems every day there's new market pressures, from new fast-moving entrants with niche offerings, pressure on margins, regulations and restrictions, and a new generation of customers that just won't stand for anything less than a superior digital experience. Big banks and global financial entities are struggling to hit the mark and respond quickly to that market. Customers are taking notice. Rising startups and companies that are born digital are really outperforming big brands, and almost 70% of the retail banks are struggling and receiving average or below average marks in the digital realm. Pile on and add on to that COVID and the global pandemic. It's really exposed flaws in process and business, and top performers across industries have set the mark. This is from the Gartner CIO survey and shows that banking lags behind in overall performance metrics when compared to other commercial enterprises. These factors have broad and significant impact. For example, when employees can't be fully productive, it affects customer service, overall ops, and it's a domino effect. So here's our first discussion point. Let's start with EJ. So EJ, give me a synopsis of how the market has changed over the past year and the new demands from the customer.
Sure. Thank you very much. So hi, everyone. Again, EJ Eckner, HSBC, and I'll be speaking about this through the lens of wholesale banking, which is my purview, and that really covers everything from our business banking clients up to our global corporate clients. Notwithstanding what has been the tragedy, and it is a true tragedy of COVID, one of the very few silver linings in that is clearly the rapid acceleration of digitization of financial services. And candidly, what we are seeing, and I think not just at HSBC, but in other similar institutions, is an acceleration of both investment and implementation by 2, 3, and sometimes more years. And ultimately, why that is occurring is this response that has been absolutely necessary to support our clients, both here in the United States as well as globally, reacting to everything from fractured supply chains to 100% remote working from home, everything from relatively simple use cases such as electronic signatures and the use of digital channels and platforms, up to much more complex, scenarios with multinational lending and candidly everything in between. So I'd say, again, notwithstanding the tragedy that has been COVID, one thing that has certainly occurred, I think broadly across all financial services, both emerging and mature, is a rapid digitalization. And thankfully, and lastly, there's enough maturity now within the available technologies out there, whether we're talking cloud, whether we're talking either internal or external platforms, that many of these journeys and many of these solutions can now truly be delivered, end to end with high controls and high confidence. So the future is bright, and we're very much looking forward to the continued, digitization of these activities.
Great. Thanks. Tony, at Grant Thornton, what's been the focus over the last year, and what are you hearing from the field, not only from financial services, but customers in other segments?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Steve. I think some of the things that we're definitely seeing in the market, one, I think, is the way projects are delivered. We've seen an adoption of things like agile methodologies and iterative value delivery on technology initiatives. That is definitely accelerating. People now are not only looking to apply agile and iterative type methodologies in technology projects, but also business transformations. The second thing I think we're seeing is obviously an awareness of the importance of being able to maintain engagements with customers. There's a lot of what we're talking about here, but also with employees and vendors. So as we think about our business partners, it's usually centered around the customer, our employees, or our vendors. And so all companies across various industries are looking at ways to introduce technology to maintain that level of engagement or improve that level of engagement with those business partners. Third, definitely a focus on data and analytics. I think heading into the pandemic, while data and analytics was certainly a focus of many companies, definitely a shift to understanding the importance of not only access to data, but the cleanliness of data, and then how to actually glean insights from the data that exists either within the enterprise or externally available. And lastly, when you're talking about data and analytics, you can't forget the importance of cybersecurity and other sorts of information security and regulatory compliance issues surrounding the use of and collection of data. So those are really the four things I would highlight, Steve.
Yeah, and I think the security piece is something that took a lot of folks by surprise. Going from a quarter of your workforce in the office to 100% remote adds some challenges on that, definitely. Danielle, you talk to a lot of people in the industry. What are the common themes that you see right now?
So I think that you all hit on a lot of, the common themes that I hear about day in and day out. But I would just say that going back, Steve, to like your original points here, that, the banking industry hasn't been really user friendly and sort of, slow, and they've kind of gotten away with it because, once you were in that relationship, that was the relationship you were in and you were sticking with it. But that's really not the way anymore, and that's not what consumers want. And then to EJ's point, you add something like COVID, it shines the light on those holes, and now you have a whole new kind of emphasis on it. And, everybody's looking for digital solutions that make sense and moving towards that. So that's been really, really great. And I think that, obviously the traditional banks know that challenger banks, they're new entrants every day, and they're ready to try to gain market share there. So it's no question that all of these things are playing a role as we move forward. I would also just add that the security part is a huge piece of it, and that is just becoming more and more part of the conversation between that and regulatory and compliance issues. I hear about that all the time.
Sure.
Okay, so sorry.
Oh yeah, I'll transition to you for the first poll question.
Great. So I was going to say, with that, we do have our first poll question. I'll remind everybody to please participate and just hit the button that you like, and then we'll go ahead and go to the results. So, is customer onboarding a priority in your organization? Top priority, we already have plans and budget in place to improve our onboarding in 2021. Medium priority, we are looking at options but haven't decided what to do yet. Low priority, we like the idea, but we have no future plans. And lastly, we already have efficient technology in place for excellent customer onboarding. We'll give everybody just a second here to go ahead and submit their answers, their responses, and then we'll move to the results in just a second here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and, just when I say I'm going to go ahead and do that, there you go. Oh, hold on, let's go back to the results here. Okay, here are our results. Is customer onboarding a priority? As you guys can see, most people on this call, it's a top priority for, and then followed by a medium priority. And I would say it's important to note that, for most people, it's a top or medium priority, and very few have actually done it yet. Steve, I'll turn back over to you so we can move into customer focus.
Sure. So I guess the real question that we all want answered is, how can we better service our customer base and present that digital, efficient, and definitely optimal experience? So in the banking world, organizations are shuffling priorities and really pouring in dollars and project time into their digital initiatives. We've heard that from Celis as we go through the presentation today. But with COVID, it's going to change customer demands and expectations. So long gone are the days of traditional branch services. I can't remember the last time I walked into my bank. You can see both the rearview mirror and a looking glass view here in this graphic. The demand for pure digital service and the degree of peer engagement will continue to change, and those that don't adapt will see a major effect on their business.
Okay, great. We're actually up to our next polling question. Same rules apply here. Please hit your radio button. How would you rate your current customer onboarding experience? Excellent, good, average, poor. Okay, please go ahead and submit your responses now, and then we'll go ahead and read those results to you. Just just give everybody a second here to submit their responses. Ten seconds. Okay, let's go see what we have here. Okay, so most, average, and then poor and good are the same there, and only 10% at excellent. So with that, I think that probably brings us to another discussion point.
It does.
It's interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. It's interesting. I have a good friend that recently started a business, and he was going through banks, and he attempted to open new accounts with several of the large banks, and he actually quit the process halfway through and ended up going up with a brand new upstart, a digital bank. Just the experience was just lackluster. So customers are really demanding that digital experience, right? And COVID's a driver. Is it millennials? Is it the state of technology? What are other industries doing? Danielle, let's start off with you and your thoughts.
So, yeah, I mean, to the point you just made, Steve, onboarding can be so tedious for customers, right? There's so many documents that have to be just reviewed, and you have to do so much stuff before you can even get moving, and it's time consuming. And customers today expect the experience of like Amazon. They think that everything, this new group of customers think that it should be that simple, that you're pressing buttons. And we just know that it's not the case really in financial services yet. So, some processes take, weeks and months if it's a mortgage or a loan, and depending on how complex it could be a real nuisance, and then you wind up losing the client, right? They abandon processes all the time. And then add to it that, customers aren't going anywhere these days, and they just want more choice, and they want things simplified. So, the banks that are winning, it has to almost feel like you're not working with the bank, right? They want to be able to use their phone. They want to be able to use their computer. Just to the point you made, Steve, that it should be, they want a simple process that's like their retail process, how they buy their groceries now, or how they buy something on Amazon.
It's amazing how the pressure from other industries has really bled into pretty much what they expect from all the folks they deal with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, EJ, is it really do or die with regards to digital? Tell us a bit about HSBC's digital initiatives.
Sure. One thing I'd say, I mentioned silver linings before, and members of my team would probably throw something at me if they heard me say this, but I think another silver lining from last year was the PPP program, which my team was also, or I should say is, because it's still happening, responsible for delivering on behalf of HSBC. And I think, not only to the point made earlier around, customer focus and ways of working, it's the extension of how we were really forced to innovate at a pace unlike I think anything us in the industry had ever experienced, to the point where, we would be co-creating our digital customer journeys, with our customers, and that would go from feedback from them on a Monday back into full production literally that Friday. And that's the level of release velocity, using, and this is slightly technical, multi-mode, mode 2 agile, that we've now put in place. And now the extension of that from a ways of working perspective beyond PPP into our onboarding journeys is also something that's been very positively received, especially, we have customers living fully within that digital experience, and we wrap around them virtual assistants and live chat to really take as much friction out of the process as possible. We're a little bit unique because of the type of wholesale customer we serve, in that our customers, specifically on the business banking side, tend to bank in 3 to 5 different countries, and our global corporates could be anywhere from 18 to 20. So now we're talking about a whole other level of complexity when you're doing international wholesale onboarding, from 3 anywhere up to double-digit onboarding events. And the range of the digitization and the ability to do that is both a function of your technology stack, but also the variability in the regulatory regimes in those respective countries. So it's quite a complex undertaking, but it's something we're very much focused on.
I'm sure complexity factors we can't even imagine. Tony, so are there any other industries where you have seen this heavy move to digital? And what are some key projects in digital transformation that you've seen for customers?
Sure. Well, I don't think it's any surprise that every industry, because of COVID, has been forced to adopt digital, regardless of where they were on that maturity curve. But certainly, as you look at some of the industries that were on the less technologically savvy side, manufacturing, distribution, life sciences, healthcare, professional services, those are all industries that are looking to create new opportunities and experiences through the use of technology and more specifically digital technologies. The other big shift that we're seeing is, I don't think digital has been all that new to those organizations that are more B2C type businesses, but the rapid transformation in the B2B space is where we're seeing a lot of acceleration around digital. So very similar to what Danielle was speaking about regarding experience. We have a saying around here that it's how can I track a $20 pizza on my phone, but I don't know what's going on with my $20 million customer. And so those are the types of things that people are thinking about in trying to understand how some of these digital technologies, things like data and analytics, can really help create that customer engagement and personalization that's required to maintain a competitive advantage in the market.
Yeah, it's interesting. At Ephesoft, we've seen customers don't have patience for things that aren't automated. So when they're interacting with an application that's tying them to a business or a customer or a partner, they expect that same type of digital experience in their day-to-day business that they do in their consumer life. So it's an interesting landscape today. And I think that brings us to another poll, Danielle.
It does. So same rules apply here, guys. What is the biggest challenge in customer onboarding? Creating new processes, resources, budget for technology, change management, recommendations on best practices and solutions, centralizing data. So I'm going to ask you to please go ahead and submit your answers here. What are the biggest challenges in customer onboarding? I'm curious to see where this one plays out. I do hear a lot about creating new processes in my, although I don't want to sway the listeners.
The vote.
But, yeah, I don't want to sway the vote. Everybody, just another second here, or I should say 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and check these results. Okay, so I don't know if that was my doing or not, but creating new processes one with 17%, and next was change management. And you can see the budget for technology, then resources, and nothing under recommendation. Okay, Steve, turning it back over to you.
Okay. So with so much pressure and so many areas of focus for improvement, what are the trends and focus areas that will provide the biggest leaps and performance improvements? So like any regulated industry, traditional financial services and banking entities have struggled with the digital transformation journey. Security considerations, compliance, regulations has really kept them tied to legacy technical infrastructure and been a blocker for the implementation of many of the cutting-edge technologies like cloud and SaaS for their core customer business systems and any applications that would enhance internal and external, enhance that digital flow of information. On the digital maturity spectrum, you can see just slight changes over the years, with really just a 6 to 8% of those folks who are kind of maturing in the digital realm over the years. And I really like this study. This is a broad Gartner global study where they portray the industry in a way that makes it really easy to visualize. So essentially, there's 5 buckets in which financial services organizations fall. About half fall into the categories of traditional or early stage. So 1 out of every 2 organizations in 2021 are still trying to do business the old way or have just realized they need to get moving. So I asked the audience, where do you sit? Are you in that lower half? And where do you think you can focus to do the most good? What technologies are deemed transformational and key? So these are the recognized game-changing technologies and where CIOs are focusing within the industry. So if you look at the top 6, just for recognition's sake, these are quite broad, and they're all top priorities, but are they really key spending areas? And is there a money trail and proof that these are actually being enacted out there in the wild? So here's a list based on the budget allocation for 2021. So CIOs are really putting their money on those game-changing technologies via budget dollars. So FinServ organizations are spending heavily to modernize, not just in the basic infrastructure or tech upgrades, but they're putting bets on the big high-return technologies to really change the game. But there's so much on this slide. How do you narrow the focus and find the right area for small wins? So it's clear from the survey that if you looked at the kind of the top technologies and top game changers, AI and process automation are at the forefront of banking CIO's mind and budget. So EJ, as head of digital for HSBC, is this in alignment with your priorities? And where do you see the most opportunity for the application of technology?
So it generally is. I would say if you just at a high level, and I think it agrees largely with what you just showed on the slide, the ability to do any truly transformational work, and artificial intelligence is such a loaded term. Machine learning is such a loaded term. There are so many flavors and varietals, of that, and I fear it's increasingly becoming this catch-all. But what I would say is as follows. It goes back to the fundamental ability to not only access but use data, and specifically in financial services, although not just in financial services, the ability really to introduce automated controls into everything that you do. A constant challenge we have back to our teams who, part of which is a process engineering group is, on this journey to optimize legacy processes, it's a very precise conversation still as to where a human may or must be in the loop. And the perennial question of, great, you believe you've optimized it, now will it work at scale satisfactory to a regulator for 100,000 interactions, on a real-time basis? And I think that often crystallizes the answer of the problem, and oftentimes it's no. So at a broad level, yes, it agrees. But I would say, to participants and attendees, the first place you're really going to want to look to ensure that you've got that foundation for which you can either iteratively or strategically transform is in your data space, and ensuring every step along the way that you're continuously evolving your controls to be more and more automated, whether we're talking about onboarding, whether we're talking about lending, because unless you are able to satisfy that, it's going to be really difficult to continue on your transformation journey.
Great comments. I totally agree. We've seen our two most popular use cases in financial services are onboarding and mortgage processing. Those are the areas that are really a big focus and are low-hanging fruit for optimization. So Danielle, in your experience and conversations, what's the hot topic of the day around technologies and what we've seen in this section?
So, I think that EJ hit a lot of really important points, and I would just add a few. I would go in one different direction, that we're seeing more growth in, it's a little bit different, but in roles like EJ, so chief digital officer, head of digital banking. So just more growth, expanding and just recognition there that you need somebody in charge of the data and the digital, and it's definitely top of mind now at financial services firms. So I think that that's one thing that we're seeing just overall. I would say there's a lot of talk about, I think I mentioned this before, but, the journey to the cloud. Okay, in one way or another, banks are using the cloud, but what does that look like now? How are they being compliant? How are they dealing with regulations? That's what we're sort of hearing a lot. There's a lot of pressure, right? And just to get away from legacy systems and homegrown systems and try to move forward. And then, of course, what you're talking about, onboarding clients, that's at the forefront too, how to do that more efficiently. So those are some of the things that we're talking about here.
Sure. And Tony, across industries, does this really match with the general landscape and what customers are focusing on in your realm?
Yeah, I think it does. I'll kind of piggyback on EJ's comments a bit. I think there's a lot of buzzwords in the market, whether that be terms like digital or AI, ML, RPA, all of those acronyms that are oftentimes thrown out for concepts of automation or transformation or data and analytics. And I think one of the things that at least we see a lot of our clients struggle with is just because there is so much information out there, it's this concept of how do I get started? Where do I start? So we see a lot of companies really focusing on now, they didn't really have plans for a significant transformation, didn't necessarily plan on evolving, into more of a cloud infrastructure, but the last 12 months have forced a lot of people into that direction, and so it's a conversation of how do I get started, how do I measure success, what are the right technologies, what are the right skills that I need in my organization to ultimately be successful. So that's where we see a lot of our clients focused.
Great, thanks. So I think we're going to another poll.
Yeah, so here's the polling question. Do you have innovation, digital transformation, or IT departments that research or focus on process improvement for customer onboarding and customer experience? Yes, no, I don't know. So pretty simple there. Yes, no, I don't know. I'd also, as people are voting, like to just remind you that you can submit your questions in the Q&A panel. We're going to have a Q&A session soon. So please remember to do that. And if we don't get to any questions during the event, we will do our best to answer them after. Okay, I'll give everybody 10 more seconds here. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right, so the majority answered yes there.
60-40 split, huh? Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right, Steve, turning back over to you.
Great. So we're in the home stretch here. We've got our last section, and here we'll talk a little bit about automation. So we've discussed the state of the market, trends in focus, as well as some of the game-changing technology out there. So where's a good place to start with customer-facing improvement projects? With the cloud, APIs, and automation being a key focus from that CIO survey and a budget area of focus as well. Identifying high-touch, low-efficiency processes and antiquated legacy systems that can be readily moved to the cloud can provide low-hanging fruit and quick wins in the journey to digital. Any technology that's deployed will have some key requirements, and here's a list here for any purchase solution in today's day and age. It's got to be accessible anywhere, it's got to reduce time, improve efficiency, and so on and so forth. So if we go down to the primary topic of today and chat about the first impression that a prospective customer will have, that's the end-to-end onboarding process. Whether it's a new account, a mortgage, a business loan, or any other initiation event, poor onboarding can really leave a poor impression. And in some cases, as I mentioned in my story, the prospect will just stop and find somebody else if you don't have a process that's amenable. So what can make the onboarding process so difficult is really that multi-channel flow of information and requirements, things like know your customer initiatives, fraud checks, and on and on and on. So how do you solve that complex problem in short order? How can you leverage those game-changer technologies like AI, cloud, and process automation to really maximize that efficiency and satisfy customer demands as well? So let's ask the panel. Customer onboarding for financial services is complex and deals with all kinds of inbound data, documents, images, et cetera. Danielle, do you see a focus on these solving these types of problems in the new account and onboarding process? Any trends you see out there?
I do. I definitely think that there is a focus on it. I think that what people are really, I think that what they're kind of focused on now is the balance, right? You don't want to have too much friction during that onboarding process. At the same point, you have to do enough identity verification and something we talked about earlier, digital versus human. So I think that that's what is really being looked at. You want to have that positive user experience, but you also want to make sure it's safe and that the platform is working. Is protecting the bank, but also making it easier for the consumer. And I would also, Steve, I would be curious to get your thoughts on this because you're in this day in and day out. So I'm curious to hear how you feel about it.
Yeah, we've got obviously all those points you made about security and ease of use. What we really see is that our customers want everything to be transparent and without friction. So that's the goal, to get that transparency where the customer doesn't even know what's going on in the background. They just know that they click a few buttons, submit a few things, and the magic happens. They don't want clunky, multi-step processes that are really painful. They just want a smooth, efficient process, and the technology behind the scenes that powers all that makes the magic happen and makes things go fast, right? They want rapid turnaround. So that's kind of my 2 cents. EJ, I'd be interested to, for a bank today that's doing things really manually in bits and pieces with the new account or onboarding process, where would you recommend a starting point? What's a good place to focus to begin with?
Just to be clear, we're not doing things very manually, but just to make sure that that's clear. There's a few things here. So let's focus on the customer journey of the onboarding experience, whether retail or wholesale. I think the same broad lessons apply. And I'm laughing somewhat because on the one hand, this journey has amazing opportunity for improvement because there are such strong vendors and technology solutions to aid and assist in the digitization of this, pardon me. But I think all of us at one point have been around the table where, we're either being pitched or pitching something, and you often wonder, is this a solution, in search of a problem? How actually and exactly is this really going to work in the real world? So what I would say is, depending upon where you and your institution are on that journey of onboarding, you need to know in precise and excruciating detail what your customer pain points are. And it really isn't hard to find, whether you're getting feedback from them directly via, app stores, whether you're hearing it from the front line, whether you analyze the complaints that are coming in. There are so many different ways to triangulate what those pain points are. And then it's really just a question of, mapping those pain points to your processes and understanding exactly what can be done, both in the short term as well as strategically, to overcome them. And to the extent that, for whatever reason, manual processes still must remain, maybe it's a high-risk type of onboarding, or maybe it still requires other forms of manual intervention. And if I could leave everyone with really just one big message on this, do not underestimate the importance of driving a digital culture within your organization. So beyond the tooling, beyond the automation, to the point where you do have your associates interacting with customers, how they do that, where they do that, the language in which they do that, the empathy for which they express concern or when there's escalations by customers. All of those things go into creating a delightful onboarding experience for the customer. Don't discount all of the cultural change that you need to drive within your organization to accomplish that along your journey.
That's a great point. I always say that the technology works, right? It's proven. We know that it does its job. It's the people that really that interact with that technology that are sometimes the most challenging part of the project, right? Getting them on board and getting them to adapt to the new way of doing business. That was a great point. Tony, what types of results can customers expect from these types of projects that are focused in process improvement and digital transformation?
Yeah, so I think as you think about what EJ just said, I think that cultural component is extremely important, and really to be able to harness the business results that can be generated through these types of technologies, it does really need to be a cultural shift within the organization. And that really comes down to change management and adoption, getting folks to understand why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing it differently, and get them to really adopt and engage in that culture. I think the other thing that we're seeing to really help drive some of that change management is really focus on aligning customer experience to business performance. So we're starting to see a number of organizations really tie something like NPS directly to top line revenue growth. in not only tying that to business performance, but also tying that or linking that to employee scorecards and metrics within the organization. So, again, everything we're talking about here is obviously centered on business performance and driving growth through customer engagement and customer experience. But to kind of piggyback on what EJ said, that adoption or that cultural component of it is extremely important. And finding creative ways to really drive that through the organization is definitely key in today's world.
Yep, people and culture, right? So, Danielle, we're on to our last poll and then to questions.
Yeah, so I want to go through this last poll kind of quickly so I can get to some of these questions that people have been asking. What are the top 3 technology priorities at your company? AI or machine learning? Customer experience workflow tools, low or / no code, cloud, centralization of data, data-driven reports or analytics. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do this one pretty quickly so we can keep moving forward and get to some of these questions. And as I said, questions that we don't get to, we will make every effort to answer after the presentation. Okay. All right. I'm just going to give this 10 more seconds. I want a few more respondents here. Okay. So 43% at customer experience and workflow tools. And you can see the rest that we have cloud and centralization, AI, machine learning, low, no code. Okay, so I would like to just move us forward to the question section. So there's a lot of questions here. We won't get to all of them, but let me get started. How does AI work with documents? Do we train the system for our unique documents?
Yeah.
Anybody want to answer that?
I can take that. I can speak to our system. So we have 2 products. One that the customer or an organization like Tony's can come in and do services to train. Then we have others that are pre-trained on hundreds of thousands of samples. So it's all data science backed and build out those machine learning models so we can recognize documents. Got another one?
I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry. Here's the next question. Our customer onboarding process requires identity verification. How would that work? What sorts of documents could be used? Can you capture and use passport?
It's EJ. I can take that one. So the answer is we're specifically talking about what's known as EID and V. And the answer is there are a range of technology solutions out there using trusted data sources that can help accelerate, if not fully digitize, that part of your process. I'm certainly not going to make any vendor recommendations here, but they are absolutely out there. And then it really boils down to a few different factors. The type of customer you're onboarding and the availability to support the digitization of that customer, the underlying risk profile and risk appetite that you have against that type of customer and perhaps those kind of products that the customer is seeking to use, and ultimately their geographic footprint. Assuming it's in the United States, there's, again, lots of trusted data sources to do that. And above all else, it goes back to, again, the underlying risk appetite of what you have for your customer base. And you can create pretty elegant, green, yellow, red path scenarios here where, depending upon the risk profile of the customer and the data match, they can sail through, and then you can have specific off-ramps depending upon kind of the nature of the hit or the nature of the risk profile. So the answer is it's absolutely possible. It just depends upon the journey you're trying to build.
Okay. Next question. We process loan applications, and there are a lot of document types. It doesn't seem like there's a way to automate this process. Is there any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, there's sure. I'll jump in again. There's technology out there today, including ours, that will take in mortgage packages and automatically identify the pages, split the PDF bundle, extract data, and give you a nice, pretty output with all the data read from those documents. So it's definitely doable today. There's a lot of customers, a lot of banks that actually automate that process.
Okay. How can AI help with dealing with the complexity of global regulations?
That's a good one.
Yeah, go ahead, EJ. I'll maybe.
No, I've spoken a lot. You go for it. I'm sure you got it all. So go for it.
Well, yeah, I'll speak to some examples of where we've applied, regulatory compliance through the use of some of these emerging technologies. And the example I'll give is more so aligned to the life sciences industry, but would be applicable for any regulated industry. But obviously, there's a lot of various regulatory bodies that publish some of these regulatory compliance matters onto various types of public, whether it be websites or other sorts of ways to consume these regulatory matters. But we've seen organizations, again, using data and analytics, consume these external data sources, whether that be a website or some other sort of government entity, in really using technology like an Ephesoft or some other type of optical character recognition, intelligent character recognition type technology to identify what those regulatory matters are, and then using data and analytics within their own transactional systems to establish compliance with those various matters, whether that be a particular regulatory body or it could be geographically focused. But there's again, I think really harnessing data and analytics and having an effective data governance type program is really where we've seen the ability to apply these technologies for regulatory compliance matters. But EJ, if you have other thoughts too, feel free to pile on.
I think that was perfectly articulated. The only other thing I would add is it's, in fairness to the person who asked the question, it's a very broad question. And at the end of the day, you see a continuum of, regulatory engagement from highly precise frameworks and guidelines and design principles in places like Singapore to places here, certainly in the United States, where traceability around decisions and artifacts to ensure unbiased and equitable outcomes are of preeminent importance, which it certainly is, to other places in the world where, candidly, it's, proverbially the Wild West and everything in between. So as with anything with AI, it's about the underlying data set and the underlying training data that you have to give you predictable, repeatable, and trusted outcomes. So that's kind of a tough question to answer, but hopefully that gives you some thoughts.
Okay, I think we're out of time here. So anybody's questions that we didn't get to, we'll go ahead and try to answer them offline for you. On behalf of American Banker, I'd really like to thank our sponsor, Ephesoft, today, and I'd also like to really thank our speakers, EJ, Tony, Steve. You guys did a terrific job. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it. On behalf of American Banker, thank you all for joining us, and have a terrific day.